So also, Mike, while we're getting there, I would like to see if you could make a comment tonight about the Bitcoin ETFs and why they're not moving in tandem with Bitcoin. Kind of interesting thing I've noticed in the last few days when Bitcoin's been so fragile or crazy, I guess. Anyway.
I don't know that I have much to share on that, but
Well, think about it for a minute.
okay.
Okay. So last week we talked about the Bishop Storehouse from a non-member's perspective and what was available in that. Anybody have any new perspectives on that or any thoughts? I had a neighbor today that came by and we talked a little bit, and he told me about that Azure Standard has a drop off in Madison on a monthly basis, which I didn't know about. So that's another idea for getting a little broader base of food items delivered semi-locally anyway.
What did you call that again?
It's Azure Standard.
Okay.
See it there on the. They're a big. I always when I see Azure, I always think Microsoft
Me too.
cloud stuff, but
I have never heard of these folks, but I found them.
yeah, they're pretty big, I think. Mostly organic, I think, but anyway, but I mean they deliver things including fresh produce. Sure where it's coming.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Not sure where it's coming from, but anyway, in Madison they bring a semi every month into what is it, Ridge, out there where the ball fields are, Hoover Ridge. There might be some in Culpeper too that I don't know about, but it's kind of surprised me. Anyway, in general, the markets were up today. I think all the indices were up except for the Russell 2000. Gold was up a little bit today, but which is down from last week. 21.59 today, still in record territory. Silver's been kind of flat. It's been staying pretty much, mostly below $24, but above $23 today. And the gold silver ratio is still 1:90, which is kind of surprising. And tilt and zeros were down a little today, which that kind of surprised me too, because we seem to have an indication that the Fed is really going to lower rates, maybe in June. So that happens, it should make these long-term treasury bonds go up, the principal of them anyway.
Hey, Winston, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Comparing the silver and gold, and the silver is what it is, gold is what it is. The silver's kind of staying flat. And you were mentioning before that silver it's kind of been down from what it normally was, say, what, a couple years ago or so, or?
Yeah, I think it was, I'm trying to remember what year it hit $50 almost for a day. I think it was, that was all the way back in 2015, maybe.
So would you say silver or gold would be a good thing to have as a hard currency?
I'd say yes, but I would go first with silver to get at least a barter position available. That you could trade. Just because silver dimes are very divisible. So you could actually take a pocket full of dimes to the farmer's market and, come back with food, where a pocket full of gold coins, you might come back a lot lighter, but uh,
Right, right.
not very divisible, down to a small level, unless you
Okay.
go gold backs, which are down
Uh-huh.
visible down to about $4.50 now. But a silver dime with $24 silver would be like $2.50. So
Yeah. Would you say the price of silver would be a pretty good time to buy some?
yeah, it's just, it's not only a monetary metal, it's an industrial metal. So that's why I think we've got this 90-to-1 ratio right now, which is, anytime the ratio is above, like, I'd say 35 to 1. Traditional wisdom has been, to buy silver, because, constitutionally the ratio is 20-to-1. And so eventually it should naturally kind of gravitate back to 20-to-1 somehow, whether that means gold coming down or silver going up. I think it would be silver going up a lot, but
Right.
silver's got a long ways to run. A lot of people think there'll be triple digit silver, and I'm sure there will, but whether that's a big deal or if it's just means the dollar it's not worth anything,
Right. Exactly.
So I don't know. I mean, I would, like I said, I would buy silver first, and then if you got something left over, then buy gold. But
Uh-huh.
but don't expect anything big to happen, in the next month or two, probably.
Right.
I mean, it might be till after, the recession's over, and,
Uh-huh.
before it really moves, coming back
So,
out.
one interesting thing, I was talking with my brother and he was talking about his, one of his grandkids whose his parents are do well, and it's like this kid has everything, and so he never knows what to get him for his birthday. And he decided to get him silver, he gets a little, some silver, and his folks keep it for him, and he's building up this silver, over time. And I thought, yeah, that's a good idea,
Yeah,
if you want to give a gift to somebody.
yeah. I've been using silver eagles as graduation presents for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Although this last year I switched to goldbacks, but just to spread a few of those around. But
Uh-huh.
anyway, and personally, I've been heavier on gold than silver, investment wise lately. Just, gold miners and stuff like that. Just because I think gold's more of a sure thing, short term wise. I think the chance of gold going from 2,000 to 3,000, maybe over the next year or two it is a pretty good possibility, where I'm not sure silver in that time period is, you know, I mean, it'll probably go up, but I don't think it's going to go up to $50, in that time period.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it usually moves after gold does, but when it does move, it moves more than gold does. So it's just a patient thing. But like I said, if you bought the junk silver coins, then you'd kind of cover two bases. You'd cover worst case scenario, and you would have an investment in the long term. So that'd be my take on it.
On this, getting back to a couple weeks ago, there was a topic we went over with that podcast about how to kind of make an educated guess on the markets of what certain things are doing, all the graphs and charts.
Yeah,
And I can't remember if it was you or somebody said that the banks keep buying gold. They're buying and buying gold all the time, and buying, billions in gold. And I thought, well, how much gold is there to buy? I mean, are there, the mines that productive that there's like hard gold on the market all the time?
Well, there is, because unlike silver, it doesn't get used up. So they say basically every bit of gold that's, well, not every bit, there's a little bit lost here and there, shipwrecks and stuff, but in general, probably at least 90% of gold that was ever mined is still with us. Where silver tends to get well, it's been running a deficit for, I don't know, at least 8 or 10 years. We're not producing as much as we're consuming, and there's very little above ground silver. And so it's actually a lot rarer than gold is, which says something about the price. I don't know what, but anyway. But yeah, there's plenty to buy if you'll bid high enough price. But that is a good point that if the central bankers around the world and especially the BRICS nations are buying, we probably should be too. So even though our government doesn't seem to really want us to, again, that's a reason to do it. So let's see.
All right,
So
thanks for going over that. I sorry to take up so much time from your main topic, whatever you're producing. I don't want to belabor this too much.
That's okay. We don't necessarily know what topic's most important to us tonight. And we might not for a while. So tilts and zeros were down a little bit today on the bonds. Wheat was up a little bit, but it's still lower than I thought it would go. It got down to I think like 507 or 508. I've said many times that I didn't think it'd go below $5, and I'm still standing by that, but it kind of scared me this last week. So the other thing that we've talked about is the industrial military complex stocks, and they were kind of mixed today, except for Boeing, which it's kind of a military stock. A lot of their business is with the military, but they just can't seem to figure out how to run a railroad, and their stock was way down today on all the bad news about their planes, falling out of the sky or the doors blowing off of it or whatever. So they've got a lot of problems. So I think it's an opportunity to acquire some of these stocks. Anytime it goes down, I look every day and see if one of them's down. If so, I try to pick up a little of it. Natural gas has been down after coming off its bottom. It was I think last week, I think it was like 1751 maybe. And the futures were 190, and so today it's down considerably lower than that. And cost of production, like I said, is way up at $2.30. So this can't last forever. Some of these things that I've been in is instead of the UNG, I've been buying Southwestern and Chesapeake and Shinnery, which is LNG. And those have all held up pretty well through the downturn. Of course, the big news has been Bitcoin. And today, even there was a lot of movement on it. A low of 69,000, a high of 73,000 just today. And Coinbase was up a couple of dollars. I didn't check master, but I think I told you last week that I caused all this hoopla because I bought bits as a substitute for Bitcoin, and today it's down a little bit to $70. But I think the thing I didn't tell you is I bought bits at I think $69.10, and right after I bought it, I put in a sell order for $75. Now, yesterday morning, even after Bitcoin had kind of crashed down and then went back up and set the record and come back down again, well, it'd gone up Sunday night. It had gone up, in the global market, and so Monday morning when Bits opened, it opened at $75.06, and so that sell order that I had in took effect. And like I said, today it's down to 70 cents. So there's a textbook case of what you should do. You should, I don't always do it, and I certainly don't always execute it this way, but you should pick what you expect to get from it and go ahead and put your order in and take it off the table when you can. Just happy that for once in my life, everything went according to plan there.
So does that sale happen automatically when it hits that number?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because
You don't have to look at it and press a button or anything.
Right, I just put a limit order in and, said $75. If it's hits $75, sell it. And it happened. So I was happy to see that. So anyway, so we still got a Texas standoff, I guess, and we still got a war on natural gas, war on cash, war on food, and I'd like to play a short clip on that. I don't know how many of you have heard about Amos Miller, the farmer in the Amish farmer in Pennsylvania, which the government's been taking him to task.
Yeah, we've heard about that.
Okay, play a little bit of this. Got somebody I follow, she's interviewing his lawyer. And tell him what the deal is.
He honestly didn't do an analysis on that. And so that sets up part of our appeal, is that he seemed to think that he had to rubber stamp the state. Mm-hmm. And that's really not our interpretation of the law. And that's where we would disagree with it. But we're preserving all the constitutional issues and raising those on appeal as well.
Gotcha. All right, Sherry Morris was the official at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture who signed the affidavit of probable cause. She really set this whole situation in motion. The probable cause was based on a customer of Miller's in New York who became sick with E. coli. There was no complaint issued by the individual, and the individual did not want to comment on the case. How would the PDA have obtained this report?
That's still in doubt. So the PDA never produced any of the New York's files. Mm. They never produced any other state's files. And there was a history of the PDA lying about Amos Miller and food. They had claimed many years ago that an elderly lady had died after consuming Amos Miller's product. We researched it and, in fact, got a sworn statement under penalty of perjury, an investigative article from a former Wall Street Journal reporter. And as well, we got the database evidence that showed that they were lying all along, that it was an elderly woman who had fourth stage cancer who died in the hospital from cancer. Her own caregiver said she never drank any of Amos Miller's raw milk or any other Amos Miller product. And it turned out that the listeria diagnosis was something that had come 6 months before. So it had nothing to do with her hospitalization, and it could have had nothing to do with Amos Miller. So they'd been lying about it for basically 6 years. So we suspected they were doing the same when it came to New York. They came in and sampled all of his food products, sampled his water supply, sampled his environmental sample. We went and did our own samples of everything, and they found no E. coli at all. So they knew that was false. They hid that information from the court. They knew there was no E. coli as of January 6th, yet 18 days later, they were withholding that information from the judge when demanding an emergency ex parte injunction. And it fits. I mean, basically, anytime a state of Pennsylvania official is testifying under oath in this case, it's 100% out of 100% that they're committing perjury and lying about something. They did the same thing lying on the stand.
Anyway, that's kind of what's going on with poor Amos Miller. He's been raked over the coals, and they're trying to run him out of dollars and all that stuff like they tend to do. So anyway, back to back to Mike. I just realized I failed to ask or talk about the Bitcoin ETFs, and what I was gonna bring up was that there's like 11 Bitcoin ETFs now, and I noticed the other day when Bitcoin was up 6 point something%, these ETFs, and including the bits one that I was using, even though it's not strictly a Bitcoin ETF, they have futures and they have blockchain stocks in that ETF, but Bitcoin was up 6 something%, and these ETFs were up somewhere from like 3.9 to 4.1% at the same time. And just curious if anybody else had noticed that or had any ideas as to why that might be.
I hadn't noticed it, but the ones that are physically backed by Bitcoin, have they been lagging behind as much?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Just those.
Okay, not just the futures.
The ones that are supposed to be spot ETFs.
Right.
There's 10 or 11 of them now, and I would have thought they would all be like the same price and that they would all move the same amount as Bitcoin, but
Well,
it ain't so.
yeah, I would think that I mean they're still based on supply and demand, right?
Yeah,
Would that be true?
yeah, and different ones of them have better deals than others. Some of them have like what's the one that was there all along? BTC, GBTC, Grayscale's fund that converted to a spot ETF. They charge, I think, it may be 5 or 6% management fee. It's real high. So
Yeah.
and some of the others, at least introductory, are not charging any management fee. So I could see a difference in that regard, that that one would be less valuable than one that charges no management fee.
Well, I'd say in general, I mean, didn't most of them just get recently approved like this last fall?
Right. Well, yeah, it's been less, I think it's been less than 3 months.
Right. So I would think that partly because they're somewhat new, and of course they attract a probably quite a bit different kind of investor than outright Bitcoin would. So there's probably a little more caution, I'm guessing, to jump into them, and therefore less buying pressure to drive them out. And that would be my hypothesis. But
Right. I mean, the other thing I thought of possibility is, people may not believe that BlackRock, for example, if you're a BlackRock hater, they may not believe that they really have the Bitcoin,
right, and that's the Bitcoin believers, like you've said before, the motto is not your key, not your coin.
Right.
So that's one of the advantages of Bitcoin, which obviously an ETF forgoes that, and that's not the reason someone who buys into an ETF is doing so. So I think that combined with the newness, I'll bet you we'll start seeing in the next quarter some more movement on that, especially if Bitcoin keeps rising. But I would think that because they're new and different investor profiles, you're just not going to see the same amount of activity.
Yeah. And there may be some arbitrage opportunities there by buying the cheapest ETF. Because in case they all come together, it's if they all meet in the middle,
That's true.
6 months from now, it might be advantage to buying the cheap one,
That's a good point.
the one that's out of favor.
So out of all these currencies, do you foresee that the federal government is going to be moving towards taking one of these as the official electronic currency for the United States?
You want to take a crack at that, Mike?
I would say the answer to that would be no. These would be competitors to what they're likely to implement, probably the Fed coin or I'm not up on the latest news, but I do not see them adopting this. They don't control the supply and they can't print money.
Okay. I didn't know how all of it worked, so I didn't know if somehow the government could force it into one currency or not.
Well, I mean, yeah, they could force certain things, but Bitcoin, for example, in the algorithm itself, there's a finite number of coins that will be mined, and once they're all mined, there will be no more minted. And in order to expand the supply, well, the circulating amount, you'll just deal in smaller and smaller fractions. Similar to if we never found another nugget of gold on Earth ever again, and gold became our medium of exchange, we would just find ways of transacting in lower and lower amounts. For instance, like the gold backs, which have like what is it, gold vapor deposition on some protected paper, so you get like a real small amount,
Right.
versus trying to cut a chip off of a coin like in the old days, right? But I guess in my reading, governments are not, they really like being able to print more money when they need to. So
Yeah, right.
I don't see that happening. See them adopting any of the current, I guess, open blockchains. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Winston?
Yeah, I tend to agree. But one thing is interesting. It looks like the BRICS are planning on implementing an open blockchain currency for transaction amongst themselves. So,
But the algorithm determining how many bricks there are in supply is, I guess, flexible.
yeah, they didn't elaborate on that part.
Yeah. So yeah, there's two parts to, Bitcoin and others. That you have the open blockchain, so all transactions are out in the open. And then you've also got the source code is open, and sort of the foundation of it was laid a long time ago, and anybody that wants to depart from that foundation ends up I guess calling it a fork if they want to change some aspects that I guess the core founding team that disagrees with. They could fork it and change it, but then you've got a different, it's a different coin then.
Yeah, kind of like Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, and of course gets more complicated because all the Bitcoin forks would probably argue which one of them is the true successor, but that's a detail that kind of a rabbit hole.
And the halving is coming up too. So anyway, all kinds of exciting things happening there. So let's get on to our seasonal information. Talked about still time to plant trees and prune trees. Need to be finishing up with your tree pruning. The way things are, if we have many more days like today, things are going to really start popping out open. So start a garden, plant seeds indoors, start your potato slips. I'll have some news on that at the end. Maybe we'll get enough cold weather to put your one more pig. It's time to check your bees if you've got any, or if you got any alive still. Still got that deal going on for seedsandsuch.com for ordering packets of seeds. Lots of people selling potassium iodine nowadays. Let's see. On that note, I got something that we talked about last week, but I would like to play the video. This is Clyde's Garden Planner.
I've developed a really handy vegetable planting slide chart that works in most of North America. Let me show it to you. All right, this is the spring side of the chart, and you'll notice that there is a red average frost line, and that frost line slides, and what you do is you slide it on the horizontal calendar to your local frost date. And once it's in place, each column here is a week, and FP represents the first outdoor planting week for each garden vegetable. The early crops like peas and spinach and cabbage, they plant ahead of the frost, while and they're called the cold crops. And the warmer crops, like peppers and tomatoes, they wait until about 4 weeks after the average frost, and that's called the frost-free date. The green check marks give you the expected harvest dates, and the indoor seeding dates are marked so you know when to put your flats out in the house so that they'll be ready at the appropriate time to go outside. And you'll notice that there is a little legend down here to help you with it. Flip the chart up and slide it open, and your planting data comes into view. You've got the quantity of seed for a 10-foot row, the planting depth for putting the seeds into the ground, the distance between rows, the distance between plants so that they're not overcrowded, the sunlight requirements in case you have shaded areas in your garden, the expected yield from a 10-foot row, like the pounds of produce that you can expect to get, and the natural companions for companion planting. And those are plants that benefit from being planted close together. Their roots assist one another. Again, that's the spring side of the chart. If you want to do a fall garden, you flip the chart over and to the fall side and slide it to your fall frost date, and it gives you the LP as the last outdoor planting week for each garden vegetable, so that it won't be destroyed by the frost. And all the information for planting and the activity there is reordered based on the nature of the fall planting and fall gardening. If you don't know your frost dates, that's okay, because the instructions come with a listing of frost dates throughout the United States and Canada. On the back of the instructions, you'll find the frost dates listed for both spring and fall, and they're recorded by state and city, so you can find a city near you in North America.
Anyway, I just thought that was too cool for school.
Have you already ordered any?
I have not gotten around to order.
I will order right now. I'll order a 12-pack and
Okay. This deal.
yeah, I'll get you one.
I'll think about 3 or 4 of them if you can spare them.
Sure, maybe I'll get 24.
Okay.
So Mike, I think I'd probably take a couple of them.
Sounds good.
I'll get a couple from you.
Okay, let me go back to where did his there they are. Okay, so you wanted when Brother Apple, you wanted 4, and Chris, you wanted a couple?
2, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, get plenty.
Yeah, so now how much are they again?
Depends on how many I buy. I'm thinking I might buy 25 of them right now, so they'll be about $3 a piece.
All right. I'm good.
Okay. We got another video up on the screen now.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get into this because it's 26 minutes and I think we need to hear it all.
Hello, Chris here from Coulter's Good Earth Farm. Have you ever thought about what it would take in order to grow enough food to feed your family during difficult times? Well, now's a great time to start thinking about that. And in fact, several years ago, I wrote a book called The Complete Guide to Survival Gardening to help you do that very thing. In that book, I detail the 12 crops that you need to focus on in order to produce enough calories to feed your family. So in today's video, we're going to look at those 12 crops, which I call the Dirty Dozen. So how did I select the Dirty Dozen? Well, I wanted crops that could be produced easily on a backyard scale using just hand tools without a lot of mechanization. So that's great for all the homesteaders, no matter how big a property you have. I also wanted crops that were easy to save seed from, that you could produce, you could propagate by yourself without any outside help. So that's very important. We're talking about self-sufficiency and sustainability. I also wanted crops that bridged the seasons. So we had main season crops, but we also have crops on the shoulders and even in the winter. I also focused on crops that you could store, that had a potential to be used for a long season so that we have something to eat through most of the year. Well, the very first crop and the primary crop that we should depend on as survival gardeners is corn. In North America, this makes a lot of sense because where we're at, this was a crop that the first peoples here depended on as their primary field crop. So corn or maize is our #1 crop of the Dirty Dozen. So what type of corn do we need to grow? Well, normally we grow a heirloom flint corn. We have our own variety we've been growing for several years, but it was originally Bloody Butcher mixed with a couple other varieties to make a good flour corn, because that's primarily the way you're going to be using this corn is as corn meal. And you can use that into making it into a paste, a mush, or cornbread. So that's the primary way we're going to prepare this corn. But the good thing about Bloody Butcher and some of these other heirloom field corns is that they can be used as a dual-purpose corn. When they're just tender in the cob, you can actually use them as a roasting ear. So they make a pretty decent roasting ear at an early stage. You can go ahead and start eating them. And then you can let them mature and fully dry out. They can be easily harvested by hand and stored. And then you can take out those kernels off the cob, grind those into a usable cornmeal, and then cook that cornmeal. So that's primarily the way we're going to be using corn. The other good thing about corn is that it can be used as an animal feed. So if we have some chickens, we can crack that corn, use it as an animal feed, cows, pigs, we can feed that to other animals. So it's a good dual-purpose crop. It's also very easy to plant, to cultivate, and to harvest and store, as well as process by hand. Now that's not the case for other crops such as wheat or barley or millet. Some areas are going to have some of those crops, but for our area, USDA Zone 6, and this applies to probably Zone 4, 5, 7, and 8, corn should be our primary crop. Now normally we do our Bloody Butcher field corn mix, but this year we have a patch of popcorn I wanted to show you, and this is another good one that we use a lot. Now this is just a yellow-eared, this is actually a hybrid, but you can get an heirloom if you want. This is a hybrid popcorn. The good thing about popcorn, it has all those attributes of field corn. This can be ground into a really nice, tasty cornmeal, but you have the added benefit of being able to pop it as a snack. And we're talking about maybe you have limited food sources, you can't go to the grocery store, buy those chips or Doritos. Well, you can use corn to make some nice popcorn. And if you want to grind your regular corn, you can use that to make tortillas. You can use that to make tortilla chips. So there's lots of different options for corn. So it's a really good dual purpose crop that you can use for a lot of different things. Now, you don't want to necessarily grow both types of corn, even maybe a sweet corn you want to add to the mix in the same year in the same area, because they will cross-pollinate. Corn cross-pollinates readily. So you really want to select one type. And what we do is we alternate years. So our sweet corn is at a different property, but we have popcorn here on this farm, and then one year, and the next year we have our flour corn. And that keeps our seed pure, and either one is a good corn to have. So we kind of rotate that out so we keep our seed stock going, and corn seed stores a long time. So that's the other good thing about this this crop, is that you can pull off these ears. We leave them whole. You can store these as long as they're good and dry in sealed barrels or feed sacks. You can hang them up in a dry place. You can put them in the basement, however you want to do that. So they store really well. So the seed will keep for several years. So you can plant alternate years in order to increase your diversity of crops. Also, we have the corn shock, which makes a useful animal fodder if you have animals integrated into your homestead as well. So it's also good. Maybe a negative with corn is it is a high nitrogen user. So it's going to need fertile soil in order to get your full yield potential. And that really talks about our next crop that we're going to add to corn to sort of alleviate those problems. So the number 2 crop of the Dirty Dozen is the green bean. Now that makes sense, and it's going to sound familiar, right? Because you have corn, you have beans, and you're going to know what number 3 is going to be, squash, right? That's the 3 sisters, because those have been grown in North America as staple crops for a long time. There's no need to change that. We can change up a little types of varieties and the types we grow, but we want to stick with those as the main crops that we do grow here in our area. Now, green beans are a good versatile crop for a lot of reasons. Number 1 is they fix nitrogen, so they don't need a lot of fertility, and in fact, they add fertility to the soil. So they're good grown with a crop like corn or in a rotation. If you use a pole bean variety, you can actually grow those together using the corn for the structure for the bean to climb up. This is actually a different type of green bean. These are the long beans. You might have heard them called a yard long bean. Well, they're a different species than your normal garden bean, so these can be grown alongside your regular green beans. So they're a great option if you want more than one type of bean in your garden at the same time. Now, when people think of green beans, they normally think of a bush stringless bean. And while those are good, and you might want to add them into your rotation, they're not my number 1 recommendation for a bean to grow as a part of the Dirty Dozen. That recommendation goes to an heirloom pole bean. Now, the green bean I recommend is a really dual-purpose green bean, and those categories are checked with a lot of heirloom beans. And that's for the reason that while they're young, you can pull them and use them just like you would a snap bean. So at the green stage, you can pull them, snap them, and cook them like a regular green bean. If you let them get to about this stage, actually, they can be hulled out and used for a shell bean, a fresh shell bean. And then if you let them completely dry, which is the stage of most of these beans, we are at the point of saving these for seed right now, they can be kept as a dry bean. So you have a long season on this bean, and they're easy to save the seeds from. This is a very productive heirloom pole bean from eastern Kentucky. This is the one we use primarily for our preserving or canning bean. And so you can use a bean similar to this. One that comes to mind, there's a lot of different varieties. You probably want to find one for your area. But if you've seen something like a cranberry bean, and there's actually a cranberry bush bean, so if you don't want to fool with these trellises, then you can use a bush variety of that, like a French horticulture or a dwarf French horticulture bean. Those are similar. They can be used at the shell stage, at the fresh stage, and at the dry stage as well. So that's my primary recommendation for green beans, which is number 2 of the Dirty Dozen. The number 3 crop in the Dirty Dozen is the winter squash. Now that's different than the summer squash that you're maybe more familiar with, but winter squash are more nutritious. They have a longer storage potential. This is our favorite here, and it's almost at the harvest stage. This is Long Island cheese. It's a nice, fairly large storage squash, has a great flavor. It's used in a variety of ways and has that long-term storage potential that we'll be able to put this in cool, dry storage and be eating this until next spring. Now, when the Native Americans were first using their varieties of squash, things have changed a little bit. Often they would dry their squash, so they would slice it thin and dry it and store it that way. You can still do that for varieties of squash, but the varieties we have, especially like butternut or like this Long Island cheese, Seminole squash is one of our favorite long-term storage squashes. There's a small variety of that. There's a large variety of that. If you want something that really stores, you'll select that one. So we have the potential to grow lots of different squash that store well. You can also grow different types. If they're a pumpkin, like a pie pumpkin, is different than a butternut type squash. So they can be grown side by side. You can save the seed from both of those types. So you can have a variety of squash, some that keep long, some that don't keep as long, so you use those first. The next crop in our Dirty Dozen is the garden pea. And it is late summer, so I unfortunately don't have a crop to show you growing in the ground, but that's the point. In the summertime, when we have green beans growing that we're using and storing, in the winter or the late fall, early spring, we have peas that we're using because they're a cold weather crop. But remember, they're also a nitrogen fixer, a legume, so they're very important to add to the mix. The great thing about peas are there's a lot of variations in peas. So you can grow snow peas, you can grow sugar snap peas, you can also grow the shell pea. And this is what we have here. These are shell pea seeds. And the good thing about these is that if you can freeze the other types, but this is good dry. So you can actually let those mature, let them dry out. They're easy to save those seeds from. And you can use these, rehydrate these, and cook these in the wintertime. So peas are a great versatile crop. The good thing about them is they're fairly self-pollinating, so you can grow all 3 types, snow, sugar snaps, and shell in a close area, and they're going to be pretty much true to type, so you can save those seeds and grow them year on. So peas is the legume that you need to grow at the front of the season, at the end of the season when it's really cool. They do best then, and that gives you another legume to add to the mix. The next crop in our Dirty Dozen really helps us in those winter months, those early spring, late fall months when there's not a lot to eat. And that is kale and other cold crops. These are crops that are very nutritious, they're fairly easy to grow, and they can help us during those times when there's not a lot of our main season crops in yet. Now there are a lot of different cold crops to grow, but I focus on kale primarily because it's very nutritious and it's fairly easy to grow and save the seed from. If you have varieties that overwinter, most of the time in the spring, those will bolt and start to produce a flower, and then you can let those flower and save the seed for your next year's crop. So kale is a good one. I'm sort of leaning towards collards as well, especially if you live in parts of the South where collards can almost grow year-round, and they're a great survival crop and a great addition to the Dirty Dozen. If you ask about crops like cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower, I grow those too, but they're not in our main list of the Dirty Dozen because they generally take a couple years to produce seed. So they're biannual. It's a little trickier to get seed from cabbage and things. So they fall down further down the list in survival crops that you want to grow. Now those are detailed in the book, but a summary is that if you want to grow these crops, that's great, but you probably want to store enough seed for several years because it takes at least 2 years to produce seed from these. But a good strategy if you like cabbage, which is a great survival crop, which we grow a lot of, is that you want to store seed enough to last for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And that's easy to do. Cabbage seed lasts a long time. A crop that's overlooked often as a survival crop, but definitely makes our Dirty Dozen, is the sunflower. Now, sunflowers are a versatile crop that is easy to grow, and they look beautiful growing, right? So we can enjoy those. But what we can do is get several uses out of them. We can shell those seeds out, use them as edible human food. We can roast those, make a good snack. If we have a small-scale home press. We can actually press those for oil and have an edible vegetable oil. We can use those as chicken feed. So if we have livestock or especially chickens integrated into the homestead, it's hard to grow good feed for those chickens. Sunflowers makes a good chicken feed as well. The great thing about sunflowers, you can start on them early. You can actually harvest them before those seeds become mature, take that head and roast that head and eat those seeds before they're fully hulled out and mature. So it's a really versatile crop. They're easy to store. All you have to do is to pull the heads off before the birds get them. The birds already started on this one. But take those seed heads. Oh, this is a mammoth variety that has large seeds and heavy yields. So we want to get those before the birds do. Knock off those flower remnants and hang this up somewhere to dry. If we need to cover the head with a brown paper bag or something to keep the birds off of it, we can do that. We can shell this out, we can store these well, and then we can eat these throughout the winter. So sunflowers is a very versatile crop. Doesn't need a lot of fertility. They do really well in our area, and they're pretty to look at as well. After you're done, you have a lot of biomass. So actually the sunflower stalks can make a good fuel. If you incorporate those back into the ground or compost them, they produce a lot of organic matter. So they're not too bad for the soil, so they add a lot of that, and you get a great edible crop. So sunflowers, definitely in our Dirty Dozen. Now, while tomatoes don't have that many calories, they are so versatile, nutritious, and well-loved that we have to add them to our Dirty Dozen. Now, you can grow lots of different types of tomatoes, and since they're self-pollinated, I would recommend that. Cherry tomatoes are a great staple crop that are going to produce no matter what. And you can eat a lot of cherry tomatoes. You can sun-dry those, preserve those. You can even can those or use them for sauces. Even though they're small, they're going to be more disease resistant. You're probably going to have good success with those. So I would always recommend adding varieties of cherry or salad tomatoes into your growing schedule. If you like slicers or paste tomatoes, add them as well. The paste tomatoes are very good for processing. And if you want a few slicers thrown in there, do that as well. Our last crop of the year as far as tomatoes is a storage tomato crop. I think this one's called Golden Treasure. It may be Long Keeper. I think I have both. But this is our last crop that we seed. And this is a storage tomato that will, once it's almost ripe, we'll pull those and you can set those in a cool place in storage in the basement. And they will continue just to sit there and slowly ripen, but will hold for 6 to 8 weeks. So this is the very last crop we grow, and that really extends our tomato season. Along with our processed tomatoes, tomatoes can be used almost year-round. We start in the high tunnels in April, and then we have a crop generally by May or June, fresh tomatoes, and then we have those all the way up through normally December in our zone. So you can extend the season on tomatoes, have fresh tomatoes, canned tomatoes, dried tomatoes, a lot of the year. Here we are with our next member of the Dirty Dozen that gets often overlooked on survival gardening lists, and that is okra. It is a very tough crop that produces slowly over time, especially in those droughty months of late summer. So if you're in our area or south, it definitely needs to be included on the list. Most of the objections come from people that just don't like okra, but we are talking about survival crops here. So, and it's actually a very versatile crop. You can fry it, and who doesn't like fried okra, right? But it's great in soups and curries as a thickener, and it really helps in those dishes like that if you don't have something else to add to it. So it's good added with stuff. Add it to your corn and your tomatoes. It makes a great dish with your onions. So it's very versatile. It's also one of those crops that pickles well. So we're not adding cucumbers to our Dirty Dozen, and you can check the book out to learn why. But if you want a pickled, vinegary, fermented crop, okra fills that niche really well. So you can can that as a pickled crop as well. You can also freeze it, you can dry it, and it's easy to save the seed from. So just make sure you give yourself enough time at the end of the season to leave a few pods to go to seed, let them fully mature, and then you can have plenty of seed for the coming years. We have a variety here that we've grown for several years. It's originally a cross between Emerald and Burgundy, but it's sort of our own variety that we like. Very productive. It's open pollinated, but open pollinated okra does fairly well. Hybrid seed's very expensive, but if you find a good variety that's adapted to your area, this is going to be your late summer crop that still produces a little bit every week, so you can harvest a little bit as you need it. So that's one of those dependable survival crops that I would add to every survival garden, and definitely makes our Dirty Dozen. Now we're here in the greenhouse with our next two additions to our Dirty Dozen. We're going to treat these together because they're a little bit similar. These are onions and garlic. So we're in our storage phase now. So these were dug in the summertime, and we're just using up the last of this summer crop. Garlic will be planted in the fall, so we're going to replant this in the ground. It's a very nutrient-dense crop that can actually be used year-round. So once we plant these in October, actually anytime you need garlic, you can pull that fresh plant up and use it. We'll harvest this next summer, but this hardneck variety will store through the winter until pretty much we run out of it. Sweet onions. Sweet onions are a great crop to grow, but there are lots of other types of onions. So you can start the season with green onions. You can use shallots. You can use these sweet onions for slicing, then go into your storage onions. You can use potato onions, which are multiplier onions, shallots, Welsh onions. We have Egyptian walking onions. So there's lots of variety of onions that you can use almost year-round. They're cold hardy. So in our greenhouses and high tunnels in the winter, we like evergreen hardy, just a green onion. So onions are used almost in everything you cook. So you can use them fresh, you can dry them, you can freeze them, or you can use them in live storage like this. So definitely onions, definitely garlic as the next two members of our Dirty Dozen. So far in the Dirty Dozen, we focused on our main season storage crops, but we really need something to bridge that gap in those winter months when there's nothing else growing fresh. Spinach is the crop to do that. Spinach is a member of our Dirty Dozen. It's more winter hardy than lettuces, so we can grow this year-round almost. And especially with cover in the dead of winter, we're going to have a nice, nutritious, fresh green to eat that is high in vitamins and will give us some variation in our diet when we're tired of all those storage crops. So spinach is definitely added to the list. It is late summer here, so we don't have spinach actively growing in the field. We just have some seeded for our first fall crop in trays. So here we are in our cool room looking at a portion of our storage crop of the next member of our Dirty Dozen. And it maybe should be the most important member of our Dirty Dozen because as far as calories per square foot, nothing tops potatoes. So these are Irish potatoes. This variety is Kennebec. This is one of our main season varieties that we use to store. Potatoes can be saved. You can save your seed year after year, but I would only do that maybe 2 or 3 years. They do build up viruses, so the yield's gonna decrease over time. But it is one that you can definitely get a couple years out of. They store well, just with some even low-tech in-the-ground storage. So you're going to be able to use these for a long season. You're going to be able to have lots of calories and nutrition from a small area. And that's one of the important things when we talk about survival crops in the Dirty Dozen. So potatoes definitely make the list. So if you've been keeping track, you know that this is actually number 13, right? So it's a true baker's dozen. Sweet potatoes is definitely on our list. And I added this as 13 because in the South, this is going to be a primary crop. In the North, not really. So you need to choose one of those storage crops. Sweet potatoes if you're in the South. Potatoes you're probably going to focus on more if you're in the North and can't grow sweet potatoes that well. Thankfully, we are in the Mid-South where we can grow both successfully, and we do grow both. And if you can do that, I would recommend doing it as well. But sweet potatoes are one of those crops that's very nutritious, and you can actually eat the greens. Anytime you see a green, you can stir fry that, cook that down, and use that as a nutritious edible green. Then, of course, the roots store a long time as well. So you can store those in a fairly warm area, too. They don't need cold storage, so a basement works fine for those. They store a little bit better in warmer temperatures, and they'll last a complete year in good storage conditions if they're cured right. Now, I just found a tuber not too long ago that was from last year's crop, and it still had sprouts that were coming out on it. I stuck that in soil, and you can just produce your own plants every year, which is very important for a survival crop that you want to be self-sufficient with. You want to be able to propagate that and continue to use that crop. And unlike Irish potatoes, sweet potatoes really don't build up viruses and such, so you can continue to propagate your own material year after year. So it's a great crop for that reason. Definitely a member of our Dirty Dozen +1. You can also grow different varieties of sweet potato. This is Beauregard, and this is about 1/10 of an acre plot we've started harvesting. This is grown on biodegradable black plastic, so it gives them a jump, helps with weed control. Beauregard is a orange flesh sweet potato that we really like. We also like some of the white fleshed or purple fleshed Japanese sweet potatoes. They're a little drier, so they're great for baking, maybe for frying. So it's a little bit of variation on the sweet potato theme. So you can grow different varieties and kind of shake it up a little bit. But sweet potatoes is definitely one you want to add to the list. And this is about 1/10 of an acre. We had about 1,000 plants in here, if that gives you some idea. But it's going to produce a lot. So you don't need nearly this much, but just a few hills or beds of sweet potatoes will definitely set you in good stead. While I was filming this video, I thought it might be interesting to actually get some real world numbers on calories per square foot.
Okay, it was interesting, but he didn't put it in there because it was too long. So, and I think it's too long for us. So let's get out of here and do a new share. Go back over here to our okay. And one thing I didn't cover was progress that we might be making or not. I think we'll forego that, but I found a quote today that I thought was very useful. It really touched me. It says, whatever you least want to do is probably what you most need to do. Anybody else have that one around their place?
Yes,
It resonates all the way through.
yeah. Another one I say to myself along that line is pick your hard, to remind myself I can do it now or it's going to be harder later.
That's true. That's especially true when it comes to weeding in the garden. I was circling all of his weeds that he had over there, and that I guess it was the corn. No, it was the sunflower crop where he had I could see the pigweeds, which is aramith, and I could see Johnson grass, up 6 foot tall or whatever. So anyway, but want to go through these right quick and talk about it, just because he obviously has plenty of land, so his 12 or 13 crops might not be the same as somebody that just has a patio, to grow like corn, for example. I'll give you the figures on sweet potatoes at the end here, but in my garden beds, which are approximately 64 square foot, I can harvest about 6 pounds of shelled corn on a good year. And that's not using a super hybrid or anything, but using an open pollinated blue corn usually. But 6 pounds, okay. So if you look at it from that point of view, I'm not sure corn should be number one. But if you are running beans up those corn stalks and you've got squash underneath to shade the weeds out, then maybe it's a lot more productive per square foot. So something to keep in mind. And as far as beans are concerned, the two that we've found most versatile, they're both climbers, are red noodle beans, which are the long bean, and rattlesnake beans, which is a very good bean for green beans or shelly beans, and then dry them. They're pretty much identical to pintos. So it's a three-purpose bean. And the red noodle is fresh eating for stir fry, or you can make dilly beans out of them. They're not good boiled or or just normal, canned beans because they tend to get mushy on you. But they make good dilly beans or fresh stir-fried beans. And if you let them dry, they actually the bean, which is really a pea, tastes pretty much like field peas or cow peas, pretty much like black-eyed peas. So something to be aware of. So I guess they're kind of a tri-purpose also. If I had to just grow one bean, I'd grow red noodle beans. So squash, the last of the three sisters, and the variety that I like best is Tromboncino or Tromboncino. If you just had to grow one squash, I would grow that one, and the reason for that is because if you pick it young, you can slice it up and do everything you can do with a zucchini. Or you can leave it on the vine and let it turn orange, and it'll keep all through the winter. So I really like them because of that, and because they seem to survive vine borers and squash bugs pretty well. I haven't actually grown them except on a trellis, but so I'm not sure how they would be under corn grown on the ground. I know when they're on the ground they curl up as opposed to making a long, 4 foot long round with a bulb on the end that has seed. And that's the nice thing about them is it's, think about a butternut squash that's 4 foot long and there's no seeds except in that bulb at the end. So all meat. And, his number 4 was peas, and I guess my only comment on that was if he had said cow peas, I would agree with him. But my problem with English peas is usually our weather turns from, like it was yesterday to like it was today, from cool and moist to hot and dry, and usually your pea crop just wilts away and you don't get much out of it. Where with black-eyed peas or the other 99 varieties of cow peas, they love the hot weather, and you can get they're pretty quick, like 60 days, and you can get at least 2 crops of them in too if you wanted to. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. Kale or anything else in the brassica family, I agree that that's definitely one that should be there. And I like collards also, but the only disadvantage to them is they tend to not be very good in once hot weather gets here. But you can plant a fall crop that a lot of times will go all the way through the winter. Sunflower, what'd y'all think about that one?
I think you have to have a lot of sunflowers to have enough seeds to eat for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I just didn't really feel that one. But
They are good though. It's nice to have them. I like eating them.
and the fact of maybe considering it to make a cooking oil out of, it's not the best cooking oil, but unless you got a pig on the homestead, I mean, you're gonna need some fat from somewhere.
But I think a sunflower is probably a pretty low maintenance once it gets going. I think
Yeah,
you just can let it go, and you can just about plant it anywhere, I think.
yeah, I think so. And another option there would be the Jerusalem artichokes, I guess. It's kind of the same way, even more so as far as planting it anywhere and letting it go. But it produces tubers instead of seeds. But anyway, tomatoes, yeah, you need some tomatoes. I mean, even they don't provide the most calories, there's certainly make a lot of other things edible, including number 8 even. Okra and tomatoes go good together. And I do something called fried soup in the summertime, and which usually contains okra and some firm, almost green tomatoes and some red noodle beans and some onions and maybe some peppers, which aren't on the list. So anyway, fry that up like you would okra. Have a little bit of everything in there. Might even stick some bitter melon in it. So number 9 was what he called onions and garlic. So I'm going to just call it alliums, which there's lots of different kinds. And I kind of lean towards the garlic and the multiplier onions, the green onions, and because you can pretty much have them any time of the year. And shallots are actually a pretty good one. I mean, they kind of grow like garlic, and that they multiply, and then you replant the bulb, and they multiply again. So I think shallots are a good choice in that arena.
I had a few onions I planted this year,
Uh-huh.
just recently, but I saw on the package that it was on 115 days to harvest on those. It's a long time.
Yeah. If you start them this time of year, I mean, there's some of the things like the the garlic, of course, you were supposed to plant last fall, and so it'll be ready pretty soon. And the shallots are kind of the same way. So stretch out your harvest, by planting different kinds of alliums. Number 10 was spinach. What's your thoughts on spinach?
Now, he said it lasts through the winter.
Yeah, pretty
But
hardy.
what's, you have to have like a cover for it or something, I imagine, or?
Yeah, I noticed he had lots of hatch knolls and stuff there. I don't know. I have had it go through the winter, but not as well as kale, in my opinion. And the other thing, to me, it's a lot easier to grow kale kale and anything in that family than it is spinach. It seems like I always have a hard time getting spinach to germinate, and the kale and the collards and stuff, I mean, they just pop right up.
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe that's me, but I seem to always have trouble getting spinach to germinate. So, and if anybody has any kidney stone problems or anything, spinach is high in oxalates, so it's not good for a lot of us. I just think if I was only going to grow one of these, spinach would get the axe, in my opinion, but and it's not near as productive as the others. My experience anyway.
So, for the good things it has, like I think vitamin A, I think spinach has that, right?
I believe so. A and C.
Yeah. So, but for the good things it has, you said it also has some bad stuff in it too, depending on.
Yeah, it's high in oxalates, just like what else is high in oxalates? Rhubarb is high in oxalates, and something else in the garden I can't remember. But anyway, a lot of kidney stones are made of oxalates. So anyway, coffee's high in oxalates too, I think. So,
I think almonds are too.
and turmeric, which is supposed to be the health food of,
That's unfortunate.
like I say, all things in moderation.
Yeah.
I hadn't had a kidney stone yet, so knock on wood. So potatoes was number 11, and I kind of agree with that. And I've been growing a Purple Majesty potato, which has a little more nutrients in it than your average potato, just like growing purple corn. And they're fairly productive. And also different varieties have a different amount of glycemic index. There's a variety called Norland, which is a red variety that supposedly is the lowest glycemic index. So that's kind of interesting that there is some variety in that regard. So then we get to what I would have put number 1 on the list is sweet potatoes. And the reason for that is you go back up with his number 1 in a bed, I get 6 pounds of shelled corn out of a bed. And that same bed will, on a good year, produce over 100 pounds of sweet potatoes and all the greens you want to eat. And if you had rabbits, it'd be all the greens to feed a pretty good rabbit flock. Because I just chop off everything that grows outside the raised bed, and that's a lot. Of course, last year with the drought, I only got 2 5-gallon buckets of scrawny little potatoes. But I've grown as many as 135 pounds of sweet potatoes in a 64 square foot bed. So I consider them very productive, and they don't have to have any additional nitrogen or particularly good soil, other than it's nice for it to be loose soil so you can dig them and so they can get in the ground.
Do they do they put nitrogen into the soil
I don't
like a green bean? Or
I don't believe they do, but they don't take that much out of the soil.
okay.
But I showed you this picture a couple of weeks ago about how I was putting my sweet potatoes from not last year, but year before last. He said they'd keep a year. Well, these have kept 2 years.
Oh wow.
And I saw them out there, and I had lots of these left over from 2 years ago, but I did, and they were starting to sprout. And so anyway, and now within after covering them up, I think it's been 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Now they're already broken through with the earliest I've ever made slips from. Got slips to start growing. So
Nice.
amazing that, and this is one of the purple varieties, but they kept 2 years, and we're still, I don't know, they were probably a little woody. I probably wouldn't want to eat them, but they seem to be doing just fine on propagating themselves for year number 3.
So would you say with some of these sweet potatoes, to get them to sprout, maybe have a little moisture with
Yeah,
them to get them to going?
yeah, I would just like I said, I'd just put them in a pot like this, and
Yeah.
and then cover them up and set them in a warm place in the house, preferably in the sun, and
Okay.
get warmed up, and they should take off pretty soon, because you're doing your last year's crop, right?
Yeah, I put a couple of them in a little bucket and put some dirt on them. Just today
Okay.
I did that, and I didn't see any sprouts coming off on them.
Yeah, my last year's ones didn't have any either, but these 2 year goes had lots of sprouts.
I'm just thinking, but possibly they will still sprout in
Oh,
the
yeah.
bucket and dirt. Yeah.
Yeah, they should do fine. They just need a moist, warm environment, and they should take off. But it usually takes, you know, a lot of times it takes, you know, 3 or 4 weeks sometimes. I got to jump on it, you know, by the fact that these were already sprouting.
Yeah, good.
I was afraid that they might die on me, because they were, you know, they were kind of dry looking, but they seemed to have done fine.
So I haven't gotten started yet on like sweet potatoes. Think it's too late, and
No.
and I don't have any from last year. What are your thoughts there?
Well, remind me, and I'll bring you some Sunday, because I think I think I got plenty of those back there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We'll handle them gently. They should do what mine did.
All right.
Well, any other things anybody want to bring up? Not, we'll wrap it up tonight. Almost went to 9 o'clock, so guess we better get out of here and let Mike go to bed.
Yes, definitely. It is my bedtime.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.